Just a few hours later, right before we sat down, King Charles put out a statement from Buckingham Palace saying they've withdrawn the invitation. Prince Harry will not be staying there because they gave him a deadline and he did not meet it.
If the monarch had allowed Prince Harry to stay at Buckingham Palace, despite all of his threats over the past couple of weeks, I honestly believe it could have led to the beginning of an existential crisis for the royal family.
Prince Harry has accepted an offer to stay at Buckingham Palace. He's been dealing directly with the King. Meghan's not coming. I'm not coming. I don't feel safe.
This is beyond wild. To describe Harry's UK return as a hot mess or a public relations dumpster fire is an egregious assault on, exaggeration. It is off the charts.
He accepted the offer, and the palace officially confirmed the arrangement. But less than 3 hours later, before his plane had even landed in Britain, the announcement was suddenly withdrawn. The opportunity had vanished without explanation, leaving no room for answers and raising more questions than it resolved. The sequence of events seemed too unusual to be a coincidence. So, what really happened that day?
The palace was offered to Harry months ago, and that Charles and the palace authorities have been awaiting an answer, and that there's a perfectly reasonable deadline of a week by way of notice should he wish to stay. And it's our understanding that the palace received no such message, and therefore, with Harry arriving in the United Kingdom, the accommodation no longer available.
The day began with what appeared to be a major step toward reconciliation. According to Prince Harry's team, he had accepted King Charles's invitation to stay at Buckingham Palace during his visit to the United Kingdom. This wasn't a reservation at a luxury hotel or even a return to Frogmore Cottage. It was Buckingham Palace itself. As the official residence of the British monarch, the palace is the most secure address in the country, protected around the clock by armed police and serving as the symbolic heart of the monarchy. The invitation seemed to signal a significant shift in relations, making what happened next all the more unexpected.
Harry and his team are a mess and a disaster, and it is perfectly appropriate for Charles to just tell him no. Look, we gave you plenty of time, and you couldn't come to a decision, and you kind of decide to accept last minute. And you know what? We have other plans. We have a life. Our life does not revolve around you and your needs and your drama and your toxicity and everything like that.
The story first broke as an exclusive from GBN News, with its royal correspondent describing the development as a major breakthrough. The announcement generated immediate excitement, especially since only weeks earlier, reports had insisted that no non-working royal would ever be permitted to stay at Buckingham Palace again. For a brief moment, it appeared to mark a dramatic turning point, Prince Harry returning to royal grounds and passing through the palace gates with King Charles's apparent approval. But the optimism was short-lived. Less than 3 hours later, the same broadcaster was forced to reverse its report live on air, revealing that palace aides had categorically denied Harry would be staying at Buckingham Palace after all. The sudden reversal only deepened the mystery surrounding the events of that day.
Prince Harry has accepted an offer to stay at Buckingham Palace during the UK visit. This is very significant news, given just a couple of weeks ago we were told no British monarch is ever going to live there again. Prince Harry has been in a bit of limbo as to where he's going to be staying. He's been so concerned, as we know, over the security arrangements for his visits. He's not going to get taxpayer-funded protection. The offer from King Charles has been there, actually, for a number of weeks and months for Harry to stay in a royal residence when he's in the UK. Clearly, remember, Buckingham Palace, focal point of British monarchy, guarded around the clock by armed police officers, and clearly as secure a building as you can get, really, in the United Kingdom.
Just 3 hours. That was all it took for the story to unravel. What had been presented as a major royal breakthrough collapsed in real time, unfolding live before the public. The dramatic reversal left viewers with more questions than answers. Even more striking was the fact that the explanation depended entirely on which side you believed. One account claimed the invitation had been accepted and confirmed, while the other insisted it had never existed in the first place. Both versions could not possibly be true, leaving a mystery at the heart of an already extraordinary day.
And sure enough, less than 3 hours after that breathless report from Cameron Walker, the channel's own newsreader had to come on air and admit that their scoop was a load of poppycock.
Palace aides have denied that Prince Harry will be staying at Buckingham Palace during his UK visit. GB News exclusively revealed earlier today that the Duke of Sussex had accepted King Charles's offer to stay in the monarch's official residence, something Harry's office continues to stand by.
According to the palace's version of events, Prince Harry initially declined the invitation on Saturday, but reversed his decision just a few hours later. By that point, however, officials reportedly said it was simply too late to make the necessary arrangements. Buckingham Palace is not a hotel where reservations can be changed at the last minute. The housekeeping staff no longer live on site. Additional security measures must be coordinated, and strict clearance procedures take time. Hospitality arrangements also have to be organized well in advance. From the palace's perspective, once that narrow window had closed, the opportunity to stay there had closed with it.
The king this morning said, "Hell no. Hell no. The door to Buckingham Palace is slammed in your face, Harry, and Meghan too, I think is the beginning of the reclaiming of Charles's power here." He was seen out and about in Bovington earlier today, and at the end of the day, Charles should not be having to deal with this constant nonsense, this total hysteria, this embarrassment.
Prince Harry's camp presents a very different account. According to their version, Harry had been communicating directly with King Charles throughout the process, and the accommodation had been personally agreed upon between father and son. From their perspective, the last-minute withdrawal was not the result of logistical complications or scheduling constraints. Instead, they viewed it as a calculated reversal, one that stripped away the offer just hours before Harry's arrival in Britain. Those close to Harry reportedly saw the move not as an administrative mistake, but as a deeply personal betrayal and a public humiliation timed to have the greatest possible impact.
Now, the Sussexes are saying, this is the Sussex public relations machine, which is ruthless and relentless and never sleeps.
Yeah.
And they're saying that an invitation was accepted prior to the week-long deadline. And the palace is saying that is not the case. So the first challenge for yourself, for myself, and for our brilliant audience is, who do you believe? Because it is Harry and Meghan's word against that of the palace.
As the conflicting accounts continued to emerge, a growing number of observers began to question whether either version truly explained what had happened. The possibility remained that a much larger issue was driving the entire controversy, a question worth returning to later. Before that, however, another dramatic twist unfolded. One man in particular endured what many described as a disastrous morning, and the internet was quick to seize on it. The GBN News royal correspondent hadn't merely reported the story. He had championed it with complete confidence during a live broadcast. He stated as fact that Prince Harry and King Charles were in regular telephone contact, presenting the claim with absolute certainty. It was a bold, highly specific assertion delivered with unwavering conviction, making the subsequent reversal all the more damaging to his credibility.
So, Brittany, why this matters is because Cameron Walker then has shown he's not a journalist. I mean, trust me, I know that he used to work for me at GB News, but rather a propaganda parrot using GB News to do the bidding for the delusional Duke. I found that genuinely toe-curling stuff. But, Brittany, all of these people have been warned time and again. Like, if you're still believing what the Sussexes are telling you in that little WhatsApp group, unfortunately, you're not a journalist.
Then, less than 3 hours later, the narrative unraveled. GBN News was forced to publicly revise its own reporting after palace sources denied that Prince Harry would be staying at Buckingham Palace. The reversal sparked an immediate backlash online. Social media users flooded the comment sections with criticism, with many directly targeting the correspondent who had confidently broken the story. Some accused him of relying too heavily on unreliable sources, while others claimed he had repeatedly been misled by the same insiders without learning from past mistakes. Rival commentators were even harsher, with one describing him as little more than a propaganda parrot, alleging that he simply echoed whichever side provided the day's most sensational narrative. Whether fair or not, the incident quickly became as much about the credibility of royal reporting as it was about the story itself.
In this particular situation, this has been such an absolute disaster on multiple levels. But Cameron Walker really just doesn't have any excuse here, because obviously we just saw a week ago how Harry and Meghan gave an entire itinerary to the press and then walked it back less than 24 hours later. And so it's at this point, especially when it comes to anything regarding this trip, any seasoned journalist would go, okay, that's great, but let me double check this with the palace at this point, because we are getting constantly different stories.
Then viewers began revisiting an earlier controversy involving the same correspondent. They brought up a previous report about an alleged high-speed car chase in Manhattan involving Prince Harry and Meghan. The story attracted widespread attention and criticism, with some journalists and observers questioning whether such an incident could have realistically unfolded on a heavily congested Saturday night in New York City. Whether those criticisms were justified or not, the episode became part of the public perception surrounding his reporting. And after the dramatic reversal of the Buckingham Palace story, those old questions about credibility quickly resurfaced.
She's now not coming with the children to London, in brackets, but she might go to Diana's, the late great Diana's memorial in Althorpe, right? So presumably she doesn't need security in Northamptonshire, but she needs it in London. That's another debate. Then this morning we come into work, and an hour ago we hear that Prince Harry has accepted an offer to stay in Buckingham Palace, offered to him by the King, which I jokingly said is they've probably offered him that because nobody else stays there anymore. But we've just heard 5 minutes ago that the Mail have just said that he's not staying at Buckingham Palace because he didn't give the royals enough notice despite accepting their offer.
But the controversy was not limited to one royal correspondent. Critics have long accused various royal reporters of allowing personal perspectives or preferred narratives to influence their coverage. One example often cited was the Daily Mail's veteran royal editor, who reported the missed deadline explanation for the Buckingham Palace situation. On the surface, it was a straightforward and believable account. However, critics quickly pointed to what they believed was a significant omission. Reports that the palace had already been aware of a major court ruling involving Prince Harry since the previous Thursday, days before the accommodation dispute became public. Why does that timeline matter? Because the ruling was due to be released the following day. And for those questioning the sequence of events, the timing raised a much bigger question: whether the sudden reversal was truly just a logistical issue, or whether there was something more carefully calculated happening behind the scenes.
By then, however, palace officials informed him that the stay could not go ahead because the necessary staffing and hospitality arrangements were no longer in place. Amid the continuing dispute over security arrangements for his family, Charles had personally offered Harry a place to stay at Buckingham Palace. However, it emerged today that the Duke failed to accept the offer before last Friday's deadline, leaving officials with insufficient time to make the necessary preparations for his visit.
Meanwhile, another ITV royal editor approached the controversy from a different angle, publicly questioning why the son of monarch could not simply be given a spare room at the palace. The comparison was drawn to Prince William's past legal action against tabloids over intrusive photographs, with the argument that such disputes had not affected where William was able to live or his place within the royal family. However, critics quickly challenged that comparison. They argued that William's case involved a specific and personal privacy matter concerning his family, while Prince Harry's legal battles involve a much broader campaign against multiple British media organizations spanning many years. To those critics, the two situations were fundamentally different, highlighting the wider tensions between Harry, the press, and the institution of the monarchy itself.
A Prince William case where he was simply protecting the fact that Closer magazine, for example, in France, had published topless pictures of his wife. I mean, to try and compare that with Prince Harry literally attempting to bring down the entire British press at the same time as he's trying to bring down the British royal family, it's just nonsense. There is no comparison. It is apples and oranges.
As one commentator put it, the comparison was like apples and oranges, two situations that were not remotely identical. That led to an even bigger question being raised by some observers. Was this an act of revenge? Was King Charles quietly punishing his son? Many rejected that interpretation entirely. They argued that this was not about revenge, but about fatigue, a father who, after years of public conflict and personal strain, had reached a point of deep frustration. To support that argument, commentators pointed to what they described as a broader pattern of events, suggesting that the palace's actions were part of a longer history rather than a single moment of retaliation.
Harry is suing anyone and everyone who's ever, like, some of these articles go back decades. And so it's just the whole case for Harry against the Daily Mail was sort of insane in the first place. I mean, I think some people will lose, and perhaps lose quite big in this case, and have to pay a monetary settlement because they brought the articles too late. They're outside the jurisdiction of the court and everything. So we will see how this plays out.
Then commentators pointed back to another controversy, the Kris Jenner birthday dispute from the previous year. According to reports, Prince Harry and Meghan's team claimed there had been an understanding that photographs of them from the event would not be published. The Kardashians' side, however, strongly denied that any such agreement had ever existed. For those drawing comparisons, the structure of the dispute appeared familiar. One side describing a private understanding that had been reached, while the other side rejecting that account entirely. To critics, the pattern looks similar to the Buckingham Palace controversy, a disagreement where the central question was not just what happened, but whose version of events the public should believe.
Charles's constitutional position as well is to, let's say, reflect those freedom of speech principles that should exist there in the UK. And so his son suing the papers over frivolous reasons is not a good look for the monarch. And Charles has to think here, Harry is not constitutionally relevant, yet he is constantly dragging the British monarchy into his frivolous fights. And it's time for the monarchy to, again, sever the apron strings here, really make this separation absolutely permanent. I think Harry has proven just in these last 2 weeks that this is a necessary step. Harry is not going to change.
That would mark the second time in less than a year that a reported agreement involving the Sussex camp was publicly disputed by the other side. Critics argued that while one disagreement could be explained as a simple misunderstanding, repeated disputes begin to raise questions about communication, expectations, and trust. But beneath the headlines and conflicting accounts, many observers believe the deeper issue comes back to one central point: money and security. For weeks, reports have suggested that Prince Harry's long-standing goal has been to regain publicly funded security protection during visits to the United Kingdom, rather than continuing to pay privately for his own arrangements, a cost that has been estimated in the millions of dollars annually. For those following the wider royal dispute, the security issue remains one of the biggest sources of tension behind the scenes.
I think he's playing tricks, actually. The more he could make it look that, one, the king is not helping him at all. Two, that he doesn't like the staff there. So he's making it extremely difficult to make things muddle things up for them. I mean, it is too disgusting for words. And I think that, well, he wants people to think that the king is not very important and he's more important. He and Meghan are much more important.
Reports suggested that Prince Harry had 3 possible options available. He could have traveled with his entire family and accepted the palace accommodation arrangement, arrived alone first with his family joining him several days later, or made the trip entirely on his own while the rest of the family remained in Europe. The option that ultimately happened became a major talking point among observers. Adding further fuel to the debate was Harry's own public statement that he could not imagine bringing his family back to the United Kingdom because of security concerns. Critics contrasted that position with images of Harry carrying out everyday activities alone, including being photographed calmly approaching homes in a quiet residential area during daylight hours. For some, the contrast raised questions about how the security situation is being perceived and communicated.
We also have this picture. Remember when Prince Harry went door to door ringing doorbells? He was like out with the Ring camera in the middle of the day. That's going to be Prince Harry tonight looking for a place to stay in London. He's going to be like, ding dong, next house, ding dong. He's going to have to call up some of those old flames to find a place to stay because he won't be staying at Buckingham Palace. Now, Another reason I support King Charles putting his foot down with Prince Harry is you can't trust him. Let's say he goes to stay at Buckingham Palace. I think Prince Harry, and if Meghan were traveling with him, she would be doing the same. They'd be taking pictures of things, they'd be recording, they'd have recording devices up here and there and in their cooch and their snatch all over.
Critics have continued to question the way Prince Harry's security concerns are presented, pointing to the fact that his travel to countries including Colombia, Nigeria, and Ukraine, places that have experienced serious security threats, while maintaining that returning to the United Kingdom remains too dangerous for his family. They argue that the contrast appears difficult to reconcile, especially given that millions of people travel across Britain every day without viewing domestic journeys as inherently unsafe. Adding another layer to the debate, Harry's private security team reportedly produced a report outlining alleged threats and security risks against him. Some commentators viewed the report as a serious warning that supported his concerns, while others questioned its significance, arguing that it was commissioned by Harry's own representatives rather than an independent security authority. The dispute over security, however, continues to return to one central issue: cost. And that financial question, according to several commentators, may be the factor that cuts through all the competing narratives surrounding the wider royal conflict.
Okay, no conversation is sacred. When you're Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, everything is up for public consumption, right? Everything is worth a dollar amount because Meghan Markle, she's a little huckster who will sell herself out to the highest bidder. I think it's a few years until she's moved on from Prince Harry. I think Meghan Markle, if she could find a man with real money who's like a bajillionaire, billionaire, she would be with him. I think she married Prince Harry expecting him to be much wealthier than he actually.
King Charles himself no longer regularly resides at Buckingham Palace, instead being based primarily at Clarence House, a residence that is already secure, staffed, and fully operational. Critics have pointed to this as another possible alternative, arguing that Harry could have stayed there with his father without the additional complications associated with the palace arrangement. Others have also highlighted the possibility of a private residence on the Windsor estate, which already offers security, privacy, and royal connections. Yet neither option appears to have happened. For those questioning the situation, that detail has become a significant part of the debate. They argue that if the main goal was simply private time between father and son, a quieter and less complicated solution may have been available. In their view, the focus may have extended beyond the visit itself and into the public symbolism surrounding it. Whether that interpretation is accurate remains at the center of the ongoing discussion.
So yeah, we need to turn that plane around. But no, the bottom line, as you say, he's flying into Britain
with nowhere to stay.
Nowhere to stay, and it's shocking. Now, I mean, where to start with this? So the Sussexes are effectively saying that the king is lying, because when I talk about the palace authorities and the firm, it is the king.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a great way to start the trip, is it? And the context to this is all of the to and fro, the circus that we've had about the armed royal protection. Mm-hmm. Harry saying that, he's awaiting an answer. Then it's kicked into the long grass. Then he says, well, then we're only going to come for a day, or we're not going to come to London. So that was bad enough.
Yeah.
Beyond the headlines and the public disagreements, there's also a quieter, more personal side to the story that can easily be overlooked. In one interview, veteran royal biographer Angela Levin, who spent 15 months closely observing Prince Harry while researching his biography and has said that she once had a positive impression of him, was asked about his current state of mind. Her response was notably direct. She described Harry's recent behavior as appearing inconsistent and suggested that he seemed to be struggling under the pressure surrounding his current circumstances. When questioned further, she stated that she believed he was not handling the situation particularly well at the moment. Levin also argued that traveling with two young children amid such intense scrutiny and security concerns would be extremely challenging, requiring additional support and planning that may not be practical under current conditions. She further suggested that ongoing pressure from someone close to him could be contributing to the strain, though such interpretations remain a matter of opinion rather than confirmed fact.
It's the king would obviously like to see the two little ones because they're his children, grandchildren. Yeah. But you can't do that with someone like Harry. Harry wants extra special.
Has he always been like that, Angela?
No. I think it's Meghan nagging him beyond anything.
Of course, that is one person's interpretation. shaped by a complicated and publicly debated history with Prince Harry. Yet the comments resonated because they shifted the conversation away from a simple royal dispute and towards something more personal, something that many observers viewed as a more troubling and human story. That leads to the question at the center of the entire situation. Even if Harry does arrive in Britain, will he actually have the chance to meet his father? According to reports from royal correspondents, palace insiders have described the situation as increasingly frustrating, while suggesting that King Charles' schedule for the coming week remains unchanged. Official engagements, private meetings, and existing commitments are already planned, leaving little room for last-minute adjustments. One source reportedly suggested that arranging a meeting between the king and his son would now be extremely difficult, not necessarily because of an outright refusal, but because the timing and circumstances have become so complicated. Reading between the lines, some observers interpreted the message as clear. There may be no formal rejection, but the practical chances of a meeting appear limited. The fact that similar sentiments have reportedly emerged from multiple sources has led some to view the messaging as coordinated, rather than the result of a single isolated comment.
I would say I probably believe the king and the royal family on this occasion.
And this is why we're friends, because you and I, notwithstanding the various journalistic headwinds that are presented to us, we both live in the real world. We've got common sense.
Yeah.
And you just know that Charles is not going to play those games.
No.
And the other issue we've got is we don't have a long history of Charles lying about anything. We know that he's no angel. Of course, he had an affair whilst married to Diana. He's a curmudgeon. He's short-tempered. He's this, he's that.
Reports have suggested that Queen Camilla and Prince William are also aligned with King Charles in keeping the situation tightly controlled and avoiding further escalation. If that is accurate, it raises the possibility that Harry could travel thousands of miles for his Invictus Games commitments and return home without ever having a private meeting with his father. But beyond the immediate palace drama, another theory has been gaining significant attention online. Regardless of whether people accept it or reject it, it has become one of the major sources of debate and emotion surrounding the Sussex family. Much of that discussion centers on Archie and Lilibet and the fact that they have had a relatively limited public presence compared with many other children connected to high-profile families. Their appearances have generally been carefully controlled, with fewer public sightings and fewer spontaneous photographs. However, some online commentators have taken that limited visibility much further, spreading various theories and speculation about the children. These claims, including allegations about photographs or parentage, remain unverified and have not been supported by credible evidence. It is important to separate public curiosity from unsupported speculation and recognize that privacy choices do not, by themselves, prove anything beyond a family's desire to control their children's exposure.
Harry has made all of this drama, all this chaos public, is just a reflection of just kind of, I think, what a terrible son he is. What a terrible son. And so even though, again, I think Charles desperately wants to see and have a relationship with his grandchildren, at this point, why would you want to see Harry? Because Harry's going to bring all this mess from the last 2 weeks into this meeting with his father. He's going to share it on social media or in the public in one way or another. You just can't trust Harry.
However, some commentators have raised another point that has become a major part of the online debate. They argue that Meghan Markle's father, Thomas Markle, is older than King Charles and has reportedly experienced serious health issues, yet has also remained separated from his grandchildren. Critics questioning the public reaction have pointed out that he appears to receive far less sympathy compared with the attention directed toward the king. Whether viewed as a fair comparison or not, the contrast has become a deeply emotional issue for many observers. Then there's the original purpose of Harry's visit, the Invictus Games. The event, created to support wounded, injured, and sick service personnel, has increasingly been overshadowed by discussions about palace arrangements, security, and family tensions. Many supporters and critics alike have expressed frustration that the focus has shifted away from the veterans at the center of the organization. Some commentators have also raised questions about Invictus-related finances and transparency, while others have gone further, arguing that Harry should reconsider his role within the organization. Their criticism is that constant headlines surrounding accommodation disputes and security costs risk distracting from the people the charity was established to support. But beneath all the controversy surrounding this week sits an even bigger development: a major court decision expected the following day. Prince Harry is one of several claimants involved in a legal case against a major British newspaper publisher involving multiple allegations. If the ruling goes in his favor on any significant point, he could potentially appear publicly to address the outcome, adding yet another major chapter to an already intense period of scrutiny.
Following Ravek's decision not to provide security for his family, the Duke spent last week making alternative security arrangements. Once those arrangements were in place, he was able to formally accept the offer of accommodation for himself over the weekend. It is therefore disappointing that the offer has now been withdrawn, with Tuesday's judgment in the Associated Newspapers Limited case cited as the reason. Okay, that's the key thing there. That's the key line, which Rebecca English was not reporting.
Now imagine that same scenario unfolding from inside Buckingham Palace, creating the impression that Prince Harry was still functioning as a working member of the royal family. For critics of the arrangement, the optics alone could have created a major challenge for the monarchy. According to some observers close to the situation, that possibility may have been one of the key factors behind the sudden change of plans. Under that interpretation, even if every logistical detail had been finalized weeks in advance, staffing arranged, security approved, and preparations complete, the palace may still have reconsidered once the court proceedings became a fixed event. The explanation about timing and logistics could be entirely accurate, or it could also have been the simplest public explanation for a more complicated decision. Either way, the upcoming court ruling became a development that many believed was sitting beneath the surface of the entire controversy. The public reaction was intense, with online discussions becoming increasingly divided. Some call for further distancing between Harry and the royal institution, while others argue about issues including titles, security arrangements, and the future relationship between the Sussexes and the monarchy. For many observers, the sense of patience surrounding the ongoing dispute appeared to be wearing thin. And now the situation reaches another turning point. Harry's visit, his potential meeting with his father, and the outcome of the court case could all shape the next chapter of this long-running story. Whatever happens next, the attention surrounding the royal family is unlikely to fade anytime soon.